through, it's coming through, and with the hue, it's coming through, and it's coming through, it's coming through, and with the hook, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through, and with a Luke, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through, and with whom, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through, and with Shanti, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through, and with Sugmod, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through, and with Baju, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through, and with Aum, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through, and with Mana, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through, and with Kala, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through, and with the lay, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through, it's coming through you. So bear with me with those things. I'm just making them up as I going through this. From the 28th of the 4th month of 1435, The Invisible Sword and the Easy Way Discourses, Lesson 12. Putting it all together. And what's next? I started with the spiritual exercise of the 12th month of formal membership in Ekankar after Thursday, the 2nd of January 2013. The reason being that started the 3rd month of 1435 Al-Hijra. I'll skip the superstitious and blasphemous attributes. The exercise is to imagine holding out a sword and singing. Hugh. The ability to hold it comes with practice. Trust the process and use it as a protective process. From my looking into climbing stories, I have found the name that comes from O Gamunder, meaning protection, or Awi Mund, meaning protects, with the point. The first words that come to mind with this exercise. I have found that when performing this while going to sleep, that there has repeatedly been the sights of me with a sword in a castle, or going to grab a sword that was in one. It took to my practice of this at 7:09 to 8:16 a.m. on Friday, February 28th, 2014, or the 28th of the 4th month of 1435, and it's the 13th of the 8th month of 1440, for reference. In the first and second hour of the day, divide the day into 12, to experience the following beyond mere fragments. I had been falling asleep saying, "Hugh," as I watched stars get traced in the air. This time, it did nothing, but disappeared as I drifted through purple, pink, and blue psychedelic clouds. I found myself in a clearing, surrounded by trees. The sun, Mars, and Jupiter made an appearance in the sky. At some point, I realized that I was chained to the platform there, with at least one female there with me, in the same state. I finally broke free and left. I do not know if she went with me. I descended the green mount by jumping down a series of 6 circular platforms, which each bore one of the seals for the Goetia for the period of Capricornus, Capricorn, are number 63 through 68. The first one was white. The second was light green. The third and fourth were white. The fifth was dark green. The sixth was brown. Then I could get on my way easier. I traveled far through 3 strange scenes. First, I came to a pond with a swan-like being giving off flashes of light and making strange noises. Second was like being at SeaWorld or something like that, because I was walking over a cement bridge in an aquarium where dolphins jumped over and swam under the path. The dolphins were not like any dolphins I saw before. The third scene was in a green ocean. I swam with funny-looking fish with a strange mouth in amazingly deep waters. Then I saw myself stumbling through a castle. I didn't know what I was looking for till I came upon an invisible sword in a niche. I could only tell it was there because of the weighty energy it gave off. I fled the castle fast. I can't run without severe pain in real life, but I was perfectly fine doing things like that, or jumping there. I went through many places. Some were not of this world. I encountered 970 people of all different sorts as I went along. I knew each by name and called them when I saw them in their places. I slashed up them. The sword gave up different metallic dust as this progressed. It started giving off silver, then copper, then different metallic whites, then bronze. Each of the first 970 turned to powder and fell when I was done with them. I seemed to visit the Eckmasters in order. More than a couple were female, but almost all of them were male. I noticed the sword was giving off gold dust after I finished with the 970th. I went up through 6 blood-red platforms, each with one of the sigilia, or the Shem HaMafarash segment of Capricorn, are 63 through 68 of 72. I came upon this clearing again. Things were encompassed with a thick blue mist and a very human sort of presence. I waited for it to clear as I saw Jupiter, Mars, and the sun make an appearance in the sky. The mist faded, and I saw Paul Twitchell, Darwin Gross, and Harold Klemp standing upon the platform, unlike those before, which I only called by one name. These I called by their usual and spiritual names, for stabbing them in the heart with the sword. Petters asks, Dapren and Wazi all bled out in turn. The scene faded away. I awoke very calm and peaceful. My sense of well-being transcended the usual. It was a very foggy morning. I interpret some of the elements of the experience in order with the following. Imagining or dreaming of a sword is a psychological tool of separation. It can be a protection of one's own intellect. Letting it flow resulted in what can represent being apart from the Ekankar community. I seemed to be experiencing a living devil Old God, tarot card. The first set of seals are of symbolically leaving behind vice. The swan is a symbol of beauty and harmony before death. I can't figure out where that lies between the pip cards called Change and Victory, are the Two of Discs and the Six of Wands. Jumping dolphins and swimming can mean vitality and good health and new efforts. I can't yet figure out where this lays between the Three of Discs and the Seven of Wands, are work and valor. The southfish represents consuming the storm or waters of trouble. I can't yet figure out where this third strange scene lays between the pip cards, you know, the 2 through 10 of each suit, called Power and Swiftness, are the Four of Discs and the Eight of Wands. The difference between the way of the 970 and the 3 were addressed and died may be the difference between mythical and historical. Some of the 970 are based on historical figures, but there are misconceptions or projections placed upon them. They are clearly not the same as the figures in history by those names, or by, you know, similar names that those are corruptions of. The mythical Eckmasters represent something real, but they seem to be a twist of it. The final set of seals are symbolically attaining virtues. The blue light is of the Mahantas, way showers of Ekankar. The path is hard and distinctive and difficult. Whatever one spiritual path, it should be worked out. The Ekankar version of tarot card trump number 15 surely should be called the Eckmasters. And if you see my spiritual laws of life series, into the Ekankar series, you will see this painting up here. Lesson 12, putting it all together. And as what's next, I guess I should say, the seminar between now, well, what's going to go on in the rest of the seminar going on right now, I guess. There is the law of relativity. Okay, I'll make sure. There is the law of relativity, and there is the reality of Philip of Macedon learning from the king of Sparta before learned from the king of Sparta. And there is the reality that Philip of Macedon learned from the king of Sparta. Before or after achievement, we have the same stature. In the spiritual life, what matters is the relation to God. Ekankar calls itself more of a spiritual path because it diminishes the importance of relationship and comparison to the other creations. As much as Ekankar initiations are listed as only achieved through being earned in the spiritual sense, page 111 of the Easy Way Discourses by Harold Klemp downplays looking at the behavior, lack of insight of higher initiates, or higher initiate status of those at 5 or beyond for spiritual stature. Some may feel different after a short time on a spiritual path, and others may see little change after a long time. Some have great demands, and others will have little. It is usually best to be somewhere in between. Some, upon receiving many bounties of God, will value them less. Lacking in gratitude for the spiritual gifts can be seen in the example in Al-Quran 35:32, talking about those who wrong their souls in regard to God's revelations. The verse goes on to mention those who treasured it rightly at times, but the steadfast group had the highest achievement. to them of the next part of Lesson 12 played in nicely into the theme of February 2nd's worship service in my hometown. Listening to your inner guidance applies to being aware or not. See, I can take every meeting that I have, those little folded up one sheet of paper things that you get on your way into churches and stuff. Listening to your inner guidance applies to being aware or not, in that we are to be aware of what is and how that relates to God. And skipping ahead, in Al-Quran 38:41, Ayub knew that evil was the way people acted about his situation, but he trusted in God and didn't live the victim consciousness. He could so easily have fallen into the trap of his friends and been like whom Al-Quran 35:6-8 mentions when it talks about being misled by Satan. That passage says righteous believers deserved to be forgiven. He was like that because he listened to God's guidance. Harold Klemp on page 113 speaks of a man he went to the same schools with till they were 20, called Jerry. They were different in many ways. Harold Klemp had been raised to be strict about religion and obeying the rules, while being against abusing drugs and frivolity like dancing. Jerry was outgoing and skilled in sports. They started to grow apart at a divinity school. I get the reference to the in crowd, including people who played sports, but the good grades thing, much less so. Jerry went into the last 4 years of ministry school when Harold Klemp went into the Air Force because he thought the latter was too closed off for an initiation. That seems an odd choice to me. Harold Klemp in the early 90s wrote him, but as far as I know, there hasn't been any reply. Harold Klemp on page 114 disproves the Eckankar doctrine of the knowingness of the Eckmasters by saying he wonders about his state of consciousness and actions. Harold Klemp worries that his role as heading Eckankar is why he didn't reply. Al-Quran warns about presuming poorly of people, and this can apply to the message in 41:46 when it says, when the devil whispers an idea to you, you should seek refuge in God. He is the hearer, the omniscient. Well, isn't there like 4 ways that it says that basically same thing? Fasta'id billahi minash shaitanir rajim is another one. The next page of Lesson 2 concludes the story in talking to a youth of the age when he last spoke to his friend. The youth mentioned how his friendship was as strong as ever, even though his friend Aaron had less freedom as part of his personal circles. The mention of fear, lessening, and opening the way to goodwill that places us further in God's path reminds me of the story of Dawood in Al-Quran 38:21-24. 2 with the disagreement broke into the king's private prayer chambers. They told him not to fear and asked for guidance. The brother with 1 animal was told that the brother with 99 was being unfair and asking to combine herds. King Dawood later doubted his decision and prostrated, seeking forgiveness, and returned to God's way again. So in Aramea, you use the W sound, whether it's 22 or 30 sounds or somewhere in between. W, not the, W. And in Arabic, you also have a W. You don't have a V. God may bring us towards a higher state of consciousness, as Al-Quran 39:22 says, in context with Al-Islam, submission to God, expression of peace, as a title for religion. One had to admit resistance to both definitions, being a hardness of hearts, and a drifting away completely makes sense. The next verse tells us God's revealed sayings are the best of sayings. The inspired ones may be implied as second best. The inspired ones may be implied as second best. Ekankar teachings here focus on the secondary meanings conveyed through stories as showing the way the verse implies. Al-Quran 39:23 also agrees with the softening of the hearts, then giving way to experiences, but focuses on the physical and emotional effects as an example of effects. The difference of the Ekankar doctrine is the current leader are Mahanta Wei Shou is credited with giving revelation, inspiration, imagination, and helping the devotee towards God awareness. Al-Quran 39:36 calls us to ask if God is sufficient. That verse goes on to tell us that God ultimately is who guides, not idols, or partners, or however else you want to phrase that. Could that be in the explanation of my last seasonal? Verse 37 of chapter 39 tells us that no one can misguide who God chooses to be guided, and calls us to ask who the Almighty Avenger is. The next section of the Easy Way Discourses by Harold Klemp is called Keys to Heaven. All sound and light may belong to God, but I would not attribute everything heard or seen in a religious context as being such a spiritual food. This is largely what are called psychedelic experiences. A story about a man forgetting Ekankar tapes to listen to on his way to an Ek worship service. For me, and some, it means God as a verb, and others take it as a separate member of the Trinity, like the Holy Spirit of Christianity. You know, Ek, the Who, the Mahanta, Ek Suman, the Mahanta, is that doctrine of Trinity. But he went about trying to feel light and sound as a special message, as special messages that he was in the presence of the living Ekmaster, Harold Klemp. Of course, big and center is how they see them. Someone removed the image of Harold Klemp from his car. The man didn't know when his forgetfulness and loss. He didn't know what his forgetfulness and loss meant. Seeing a road sign about sound convinced him that Harold Klemp personally loved him. A woman there had abandoned Catholicism after enjoying singing Hugh at an Eck worship service a year before, but missed her recently deceased daughter. She prayed to whatever she thought the Eck meant and convinced herself her daughter kissed her. The Eckankar Trinity is Sugmod, God is a noun, Ek, God is a verb, or to many it is like the Gabriel that was treated as a god by the Christians, or some it is like the sum of all angels, and the Mahanta, current head of Eckankar. I feel that Yahweh, whatever vowels you put in that, meaning God, as a noun and verb, is but God in the singular, or Allah, Al-Ha, Al-He, Elohim, just different names for the same God. And none share in divinity. I think of passages like Al-Quran 38, 5 through 7, when I hear of people speak of spiritual hierarchies, of gods, or plurality in divinity. The first verse has people wondering if the gods could be made into one, like many Christians think. The following verse has the leaders encouraging their steadfastness in their polytheism. The third verse they call monotheism a lie, as it was not their ancestral faith. Members of Eckankar usually inflect their old Christian beliefs into their new path as members of the Eckankar Corporation. William Blake referred to an eagle wasting its time trying to be like a crow. Harold Klemp on page 118 calls this the spiritual self trying to learn laws or mental ways. Isn't Eckankar full of laws and rules to follow? Divine sounds can free your mind, as we learned with the reference to Al-Quran and all explicit revelation to the prophets and sent ones of God. Is Eckankar right about going beyond the mind? Is the imagination of the Ekist the sort of intellectual lies about God referred to in Al-Quran 39:32 as being of the most evil things? What is the truth mentioned in the next verse that the righteous promote? Verse 34 certainly seems to tie it back to the better spiritual life mentioned and imagination with the reference to the true wish fulfillment. The verse after that claims, then God will dismiss their evil and only reward their righteousness. The 38th verse calls people to think, who created the universe, and asks why people treat others as God. Then it calls us to trust in God. Harold Klemp on page 117 refers to God as a verb, returning the trust in God with love to you. Islam and Eckankar give a 5-step process to spiritual development. The Eckankar version starts with longing for God. It continues with finding out who their leader is and following Eckankar official teachings. The third step is doing the official spiritual practices of the group. The fourth step is to abandon fear. The final step is to accept the so-called higher version of the truth that is of one's own experience. Page 118 and 119 of the Easy Way Discourses by Harold Klemp mentions a story around the exercise as being an experience of a passage from how to find God. Mahanta's transcripts, Book 2, on how to get protection from the leader of Ekankar in his dream. Well, this is the belief that this is the means. In his dream, he had trouble when he tried to control an invisible sword instead of this medieval sword controlling him. Was it a good idea to trust in an imagined sword or use it as a symbol of a protection of a leader? Obviously, if you're wielding the tools, you're doing the work yourself. Al-Quran 39:8 mentions of how some implore God for help, but abandon it when they are helped in this world. They misassociate with God after forgetting their invoking. The verse before that lays down the fact that God doesn't need us, but dislikes to witness us stray. Verse 7 also refers to how God is pleased with your appreciation and how no one can bear your sins' punishments, nor can you hide what goes on with your innermost self. Now, the Easy Way Discourses closes with the What's Next letter, and they've updated it since, that wasn't out in time for me to get it. So, ideally, you would read my series in sequence or would otherwise be ready for the discourses that you read. These are sort of meant as a once a month, and switch. And certainly I could come up with the different spiritual exercises and probably do that for forever. But ideally, you would read my series in sequence or would otherwise be ready for the discourses that you read. There is a unique quality to dream work in Ekankar as well as in other paths that acknowledge its value. Modern psychologists have still left much to learn from dreams and their process. They tend to focus only on the sayings of the lower self dreams and not what Islam calls true or prophetic dreams. Ekankar likewise focuses on the spiritual side of dreams, but discounts the type of symbolic interpretation done by psychologists, while ignoring that done by prophets like Muhammad and their followers. Ekankar seems to focus on what a psychologist might call projections. An interesting thing that's actually a tradition in the Islamic world is going to the masjid, the house for the place for the ritual prayer, the communal place for the ritual prayer, and discussing, sharing, and interpreting each other's dreams and stuff. But it's not done willy-nilly. It's a very serious endeavor. Ekankar seems to focus on what a psychologist might call projections. Paul Twitchell did talk about the art of projection. Ekankar members Ekankar members are taught that the current head of Ekankar is their dream master and has visited them in their dreams. They provide techniques to make it more likely to remember dreams with Harold Klemp, Darwin Gross. They've tried to ignore his place in Ekankar history since 1983. They've edited a lot of stuff out, banned his books, that sort of thing. Paul Twitchell and the 970 mythological Ekmasters. Yeah, if you're not looking into it on your own, you can spend years in Ekankar before you actually hear the name Darwin Gross in any of the books, any of the things. It doesn't come up too much. And the only video of the handing over, of the period where there were two living Ekmasters, according to the corporation, that stuff is edited down to the point where you kind of, there is some reference, but it's, yeah. Paul Twitchell and the 970 mythological Ekmasters. We should trust our inner guidance to a degree. Much can be learned, even more than ever expected, if if we have our awareness to what goes on within us, we can use that to strengthen our bond with God. We can attach that process to a deeper following of God's prophets. I have received my second-year membership card in the mail, but the DR1, which stands for the Dream 1 Discourses, are by tradition not to be started until February 6th or 11th, 2014. Was it when I applied for membership, or was it when it arrived in the mail? That would mark when I first signed up or received the Discourses. Islam has much to say about dreams too. Al-Quran 39:42 speaks of the death the soul encounters at the end of life, and a death where the soul travels during sleep. Ekankar attempts to provide people with answers about when we are unconscious. One answer they provide is that one of the things they teach us is about past lives. A passage taken out of context to mean transmigration of the soul is real in the Islamic tradition is Al-Quran 40:10. The soul moving, not the reincarnation thing. The first verse mentions how God returns the self-hatred had by some who don't believe in the message of all God's prophets and messengers. You don't have to know them by name or know the names of their books or anything like that to believe in them all. The next verse mentions their second life and death. The context of 40:6-22 makes clear multiplicity of life is continuance of life in resurrection. The second death referred to as the extended death of entry into a hellish afterlife. The Dream 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp, like all the discourses, I assume, have a welcome and what's next letter. The other discourses are called Dreams, The Bridge to Heaven, The Dream Master, The Ways of the Dream Master, How to Remember Your Dreams, Understanding Our Dreams, How to Interpret Your Dreams, Dreams in Our Daily Life, How We Learn in the Dream State, Our Dream of Purpose, Gifts of the Dream Master, Looking at Our Past, and Dream Travel to Soul Travel. As far as this series investigating Ekankar, my responses to these are the next step. I will try to admit the good in what I read while identifying and responding to the problems. I close my comment on the 126th page book called The Easy Way Discourses by Harold Klemp by asking you to reflect on how Al-Quran 52:32 might apply to ways people reject faith. When it asks the reader, is it their dreams that dictate their behavior, or are they naturally wicked? Baraka Bashad, may the blessings be. And let me tell you the contents of the rest of the seminar. And I will try, while Harold Klemp's main talk is going on, to share a sizable paper. There's a program tonight. It says the main program, don't know what it is. Other workshops. I guess I can, since it's not coming up, I can refer to things as, you have open to everybody, open only to initiates, open to only those past the second circle, which take a full 2 years, and 5 years after each of those. So 2 years in third degree, second degree, Third degree, 7 years. Fourth degree, 12 years. Fifth degree, 17 years. Coincidentally, you make your way through the 17 discourses, and there are other things for the higher initiates, and you know, 22 years, sixth initiate. 27 years, seventh initiate. 32 years, eighth initiate. And after that, the initiations aren't so secret. But anyways, it's kind of higher initiates. There's a lot of higher initiates because the Eckankar crowd is considerably older than it used to be. And people who have been in the organization since the 80s or before is pretty common. Actually, it's in some groups, it's more common than people who've been members less than 10 years. Most people quit they have a very high turnout rate in the first year, and subsequent years, some areas are increasing in members, some are dropping, but it's not popularity is not so important. There's workshops on how to express yourself as an Eckankar member. There's workshops on how to share the Eckankar message. There's workshops on different aspects of dreams and soul travel and the theme of the year and the main talk. It used to be he used to give a few talks and say, oh, it used to be more than twice a year. There's even been talks given over video feeds. But yeah, I guess, oh, here it is. The Friday evening program, the Hugh song, the youth programs, the main program, the Eck dance, and the Saturday program, the Golden Wisdom Temple experience. Ooh, that's a long one. That's most of the morning. Hugh song in the middle of at the beginning of that. Probably a different, a field trip. Oh yeah, obviously visiting the Temple of Eck is as important as going to the seminar, really, for a lot of people. Dawn of a new golden age for Eckankar members only. Your family and the world of dreams. A guest roundtable to introduce people to Eckankar. Eck Musicians Skill Shop, Eck Writers Skill Shop, How to Create a Wonderful Life Here and Now, Creating Promo Videos for Eck Events, Love Yourself and Grow as a Parent, Roundtables. They're very specific guidelines. I thought the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was strict in giving a talk, but Eckankar, yeah, they are very ordered and specific. You don't really get, as a leader, you don't really get to express your personality too much, or they may replace you with another. That seems to be the case of what happened with one leader, and then they replaced with the old one. You know, I'm not going to say. And anyways, that's perception. Anyways, Your Letter of Light. It was a workshop. They put different ages on these, but a lot of age things are kind of. They'll make exceptions probably with the main group, just like they make exceptions locally. It's like, well, I guess we can invite some of the teenagers in. I guess we can, people who are over 40. This was really meant for people under 40. But I, in my interviews, like to divide by age to qualify those things. Maybe I will do more of the interviews at the time. But anyways, youth program of some sort. Well, it's good to have some flexibility of what can happen. Getting creative with Eck Essentials, youth programs, Call of Soul, Masters, role models for every hero's journey. Well, stepping outside of fanaticism, you definitely have the, these individuals, they're teachings, their stories, they matter. Hugh song, Hugh. only 20 minutes, but that's the average spiritual exercise. Round tables, soul travel. What is it and how do you do it? The Golden Dawn. A lot of leaders speak about the Golden Dawn, and they really mean like Aleister Crowley and associated groups, because Golden Dawn. But it gives the lighter side to things, because Crowley kind of got a bit really dark at times, and had some habits and behaviors that were kind of not thought of well by most people, and even himself at times. Cultivating joy in your family. I believe that religion is half family. You can kind of express the definition of religion in that way. EC Youth Arts Gala rehearsal. New EC members explore the secret path to heaven. New members and first initiates. Within your first year, you're thought to have a first initiation in your dream. And that can be as simple as, I finally remember seeing light in my dreams. But I have sensual experiences. I see light in my prayers. No matter how tired I am, it's going to happen at one point in the day, that the feeling, that the sight, even the alteration of the sound, not that it's interfering with the ritual, it's just, flight of eagles, quest for spiritual freedom, and round tables. Saturday evening program is a program with Harold Klemp, and they usually say Hugh when he's getting on stage. People close their eyes. Some people open them because they want to see Harold Klemp and actually get a view and see if he's oh, he saw me. I know he saw me. The Darshan, as they call it. The Eck family, our Hearthstone in the year of giving. And that's listed as 2 hours, but when has his talks ever reached 2 hours? And, decades, really. Over an hour, that's happened. Main program via live video feed featuring talk by Harold Klemp, the Mahanta Living. Oh, is he sick again this year? Because that's happened before with video feeds back when you couldn't Skype things. Harold Klemp needs to let me interview him for this channel via Google Plus or Skype or something. I'm even willing to add some sort of program to make it possible. But Google Plus and Skype, Harold Klemp, this is a shout out to you or any of the leaders of the organization. After the program, you're exploring your next spiritual step, because life goes on, right? A dessert social, the Harji dinners, Harold Klemp, dinners. That was Ekankar meals. I never dedicated anything to Harold Klemp. It wasn't like Krishnatarian. But a lot of people, I'm sure, would have maybe thought that. But it was sort of a secret thing. It was like, Ek Youth Arts Gala. And I guess, I'll try to go live during those 2 hours. I have a program printed out and ready to help me. It's bigger print. It's bigger print than this thing. This is just ridiculously small, probably 5 pages of, 5 times as big. So it'll be easier for me to present that. And if I'm helped with prints about things that I've written, it's easier to present if I actually have the prints. Sunday morning, you have a Hugh song, the central practice of Ekankar, open to everybody, same chant that everybody knows. You have your different chants of the planes. I've gone into more detail than you're going to see here. A closing assembly. Youth programs. And a main program from, to close the morning. And I'm thinking that I will do another. I won't just do Ekankar programs. This weekend, I will do more responses to a particular individual that I have saved. It's not just about him. It's about the message, interpreting what he had to say, responding to it, my experience of watching those videos. And on Sunday, I have a program which should scare some people, and maybe not scare some people, that disturb others. So remember that right belief and right practice matter. Experience is extremely important too. So as you invoke the one, go ek yourself and continue to ek yourself and ek others too.